Chapter 81 Secret Passage. You are listening at Mtlnovel Aud. Vade, Dad, if you determine that he is a trustworthy person during the interview, please tell him, I will meet him at the Three Broomsticks pub in Hogsmeade Village this Saturday morning. Ferdinand, can you leave school? Vade, I have a way. Ferdinand, is it safe? Vade, don't worry, Hogsmeade is always under the watchful eye of Mr. Dumbledore. There is a moving magical photo between the pages of the book. The love in the parent's eyes and the happy smile on the child's face are all permanently recorded by the camera. Ferdinand stared for a long time before closing the friend's account. Although the words disappeared from the paper, they were engraved in his mind. When bidding farewell at the station, the father and son faintly unveiled a veil called whitewashing the piece. From then on, Wade gradually began to write some facts that had been hidden from them in the friend's account. For example, Slytherin still advocates the supremacy of pure blood and often conflicts with Gryffindor. For example, he plans to start practicing more difficult spells with several classmates to prepare for the future. Vader also asked Ferdinand for help and published a recruitment advertisement in the Daily Prophet. The delivery address was a guest room in the Leaky Cauldron. Ferdinand reserved this room for a month and would come every day after get off work to read the letters he received. The bar owner Tom looks difficult to get along with on the outside, but he is actually a warm-hearted person who helps him organize various application letters every day. The conditions listed in the advertisement were very harsh, but the salary was only average. Even so, there were many letters sent from all directions every day. Vader specifically reminded him that some wizards would include curses or harmful potions in the letters, so that he should not open the letters himself. In fact, there is no need for Vader to remind him that Ferdinand himself is very wary of magic. He specially spent a sum of money to ask the bar owner Tom to help check whether the letters were safe. Ferdinand believed that it was possible to open a bar in a traffic thoroughfare like Diagon Alley and operate it safely with extremely poor hygiene until now. Boss Tom's magic level must be quite high. In the letter, some people attached their grades when they graduated from Hogwarts and asked for a salary increase. Others boasted about their abilities, but could not provide any effective proof other than their own bragging, but it didn't matter. From the beginning, Ferdinand knew that this recruitment advertisement was actually for one person. Wade heard the wizard's name from somewhere, and insisted on hiring only this person. No matter how beautiful someone else's resume is, it's impossible to get hired, and now, that person is finally here. Ferdinand decided to take care of this for his son. If this guy named Remus Lupin was just a facade, or if his character was questionable, Ferdinand would not let him stay with his son under any circumstances. Tuck, 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 there was a knock on the guest room door, and the boss Tom's voice came from outside the door. Mr. Gray, Mr. Lupin has arrived at the bar. Okay, I'll come right away. Ferdinand took a deep breath, straightened his collar, and walked out. Arriving at the bar on the first floor, Ferdinand, under the guidance of Boss Tom, saw the man, brown hair mixed with white hair, and an extremely worn wizard robe with a few patches on it. He looked young, but his face was haggard and old, like one of those middle-aged unemployed guys holding up signs in Canary Wharf looking for work. Ferdinand frowned. A wizard who seemed to have problems even with his basic ability to make a living. This was his first impression of Remus Lupin. According to Ferdinand's understanding of magic, it should be much easier for wizards to make money reasonably and legally than for muggles. How bad do they have to be not be able to afford new clothes? Or, does he think wearing a little shabby clothing will arouse more sympathy from his employer? But this is who Vader wants to find. Ferdinand walked over anyway. The wizard noticed the movement from a distance and looked up keenly. Although he looked exhausted, his eyes showed calmness and peace, and his movements of holding the wand quickly and covertly made him look very alert. Ferdinand suddenly understood, this was indeed the man Wade had been waiting for a long time. Hey, that's weird. Padma muttered as she flipped through the newspaper during breakfast time. What's weird? Michael, who was eating pie, asked vaguely. A recruitment advertisement I saw in the newspaper every day has disappeared. Padma tilted her head, as if trying to find the missing advertisement in the newspaper. We've hired someone. Michael said nonchalantly. Impossible. Padma said doubtfully, we also discussed it in the dormitory. It's 10 galleons per week. Logically speaking, we shouldn't be able to recruit wizards of that level. Wade said nothing and finished his breakfast quietly. After class, Wade walked up the stairs alone. The changing stairs took him to the 5th floor. After searching for a while, Wade finally found the person on the other side that Marchione mentioned in the letter. What a tall mirror! Wade tapped the mirror with his wand and whispered, Mtlnovel Aud, the true manifestation. The mirror suddenly flipped over, revealing a dark passage behind it. Vader lit up his wand with a fluorescent spell, walked in and took a look, and was stunned. There was only a few steps of open space in front of him. Further forward, the passage completely collapsed. Gravel, bricks and soil blocked the originally spacious passage. Traces of black magic could even be seen on the walls. Someone used a very dangerous explosive spell here to completely blow up this secret passage. Wade exited silently, restored the mirror, and then took out the Book of Friends. Vade, the passage collapsed. Marchione, what? I could still use it when I was in school. Didn't the castle's magic prevent it from collapsing? Marchione, forget it. I also know a secret passage behind the portrait of Paracelsus on the 6th floor. It's easy to find him. He wears a furry red hat and is chubby. He likes people to chat with him. If you talk to him about alchemy or divination, he will be willing to tell you anything. Vader, I always feel that Marchione's life as a student was also colorful. He climbed up the stairs and easily found the portrait that was so boring that he clasped his fingers. Wade was about to talk to him when he suddenly felt a hidden gaze. He turned his head and saw Mrs. Laura squatting on the ground, licking her paws and staring at him dimly from the corner of her eye. Mrs. Norris is the pet cat of the castle administrator Filch. Just like her owner, she is old and thin, and her fur has lost its luster, but she is still sensitive and responsive. Once it finds a student who violates the rules, it will rush to find its owner so that the students who violate the school rules can be punished. Like Filch, he is hated by most of the students in this school. A man and a cat looked at each other. Students walking in school in broad daylight certainly do not violate the rules. But as long as he opens the secret passage, Mrs. Norris will definitely recruit Filch. The most important thing is that Filch should also know the existence of this secret passage, so it is no longer safe to enter and exit this secret passage. Vader prepares to leave. Hey, Vader. Fred and George popped out of nowhere. They greeted enthusiastically and took Vader away with them. Fred put his arm on Wade's shoulders and asked quietly. Are you looking for the secret passage to the castle? Chapter 82 Secret Passage, McGee. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Vader paused. Is it obvious? Others may not be able to see it, but in our eyes, it is too obvious. Fred said with a smile, we saw you coming out of the corridor where the mirror was just now, and now you have found Paracel. Isn't Sus' portrait looking for a secret passage? But it's useless. Filch also knows the secret passage behind the portrait. He is alert. Even if he sneaks in, he will definitely be caught when he comes out. George didn't say anything. That guy has mastered the 4 castles. The secret passage. But we know better. If you really wanted to sneak out of school and do something. What we mean is, go to Honeyduke's and buy some candy or something. Then go to the middle of the corridor on the 4th floor and look for the statue of a one-eyed hunchbacked witch. The password is, separate left and right. The exit is at Honeyduke's. Then, Fred winked mischievously, looking forward to a great adventure from you. Why are you telling me? Wade asked strangely. The secret Taoists didn't tell a few people, did they? Of course. Even little Ronnie doesn't know that. But you have found 2 secret passages on your own. You are qualified to become a new generation of people who break the rules. Fred said solemnly, as if he was carrying out some serious inheritance. We have also received some help from our seniors. Well, very valuable help, George said vaguely, so we should also help some like-minded people. Do a good job, Wade. Fred gave a thumbs up. You are talented. Wade didn't want to know what the talent he called. He always felt that the twins had some misunderstandings about him. Separate left and right, Wade found the statue of the hunchbacked witch and chanted a spell. The hunchback of the statue immediately opened, making the space enough for him to walk in, but Wade stood at the entrance, looking at the dark passage, and finally chose to restore the statue again. Why do you have to break the rules and sneak out of school? Wade suddenly had such an idea. Gryffindor would regard this kind of thing as a great risk, but in his opinion, this kind of behavior that increases his own risk is actually undesirable. He did need to see Remus Lupin and, by the way, Marchione, but the secret passage was only a backup option. When the legitimate means failed to achieve his goal, it would not be too late for him to use the secret passage to leave the school. Several professors flashed through my mind, and finally they settled on Professor Murray's loving smile, not only because of Professor Murray's care and appreciation for him, but also because this professor doesn't take rules and discipline very seriously. Apparently Hogwarts does not allow access to the Floo network, so he connected the fireplace in his office. Although Dumbledore must have known, the law does not allow the fireplace of a non-magical household to be connected to the Floo network, so he secretly found someone to open it. Many people who have the same status and prestige as Professor Murray will gradually become like moral models and the embodiment of rules as they grow older, even if it is only on the surface. But Professor Murray will roll up his sleeves and talk to businessmen personally. But must be negotiated accordingly. Therefore, Professor Murray is the most likely person to make an exception and allow him to leave the school. Snapped. The familiar soft sound made Wade immediately turn his head. He thought it would be one of Phil and the others, but unexpectedly it was an unfamiliar house elf. "Good afternoon, Mr. Wade Grey." The elf bowed deeply. "Are you?" Wade's fingers clasped the wand vaguely, and he glanced at the top of the elf's head. "McGee?" "Good afternoon, McGee." The elf's eyes widened in surprise, and the eyes that were already as big as tennis balls became more prominent, and tears quickly welled up. Wade Grey actually remembered McGee's name. Even though McGee was just a house elf that was more inconspicuous than dust, Wade Grey actually remembered his name. He also said good afternoon to McGee. No wizard ever said good afternoon to McGee. No wizard ever remembered McGee's name. The elf burst into tears. Wade sighed, knelt down and said to him, "I'm sorry, did I say the wrong thing?" No, how could Vader Grey be wrong? He's just as Zoe says he is, a great, great wizard, just as Zoe says he is, Mikey cried. This is too exaggerated. I'm not great at all. Wade took out a tissue from his pocket and handed it to him, saying, "If I keep crying, I'm afraid it will attract others." A house elf who is not discovered by a wizard is a good house elf. This idea is like a moral law imprinted in the elf's mind. McGee's crying immediately became lower and gradually stopped after a while. "I remember Zoe said that you are researching the making of those candies." Wade asked tentatively, "Did you come to me because the research has results?" Yes, Vader Grey will be able to see candy on the table tonight." McGee sobbed, "But, no, McGee didn't come for that. McGee came to warn Vader Grey." "Warning?" Vader was stunned. "What are you warning me about?" McGee was cleaning the house in Slytherin and heard several students saying that they wanted to teach Vader Grey a lesson while he was practicing potions. McGee finished speaking with great difficulty, and then froze, as if he couldn't believe what he had done. Then he shuddered and slammed into the wall beside him, shouting, "Bad McGee! Bad McGee! Wait, McGee!" Wade grabbed her and stopped her from banging against the wall. "What are you doing, McGee?" "McGee is punishing herself. McGee is so bad, she actually leaked the secret of the little wizard," McGee said with tears in her eyes. "But Wade Grey needs to know, someone has bad intentions towards him, McGee. McGee wants to tell Wade Grey who it is, but McGee can't tell their names." He was talking and wanted to bang against the wall again, but Wade quickly stopped him and said, "Wait. You are protecting me, remember? You didn't leak any secrets, but protected a student who was about to be in danger, and you don't need to be punished. Is that so?" McGee asked confusedly. "Of course." Wade nodded affirmatively and vigorously. McGee hesitated and stopped struggling, tilting his head, as if he was in some kind of confusion. Wade whispered, "Listen to me, McGee. thank you for punishing yourself to protect me and save me from bad luck. Protecting others and sacrificing yourself is a very noble, loving and responsible behavior. It is also the meaning and value of life. There is no reason to be punished for it. McGee stared at him blankly. After a long time, he bowed deeply, and his nose touched the ground. Please be careful about your safety, Wade Gray. McGee will never tolerate Wade Gray being hurt. After saying this, he disappeared from the spot with a dirty tissue. Pop. Chapter 83 Badge, Approval. You are listening at MTnovel Aud. Vader took note of McGee's warning, but it wasn't something he needed to think about just yet. He used to practice potions in the potions classroom when he was free, and he was probably seen a few times by Slytherin students. But they didn't know that since discovering the Room of Requirement, Vader has rarely gone there. As for who those people are, Wade naturally knows it well. He decided to leave them alone for a few days, but not for too long. If it was too long, the Slytherins might choose to give up. After class on Thursday, Wade went to the astronomy tower to find Professor Murray as usual, and unexpectedly met several 7th grade students on the way. They were much taller, but each of them looked downcast, making them look a little shorter for no reason. A girl was saying to the person next to her, "I'm going to kill Jennifer. She told me before that the alchemy course was very interesting, and Professor Murray's requirements are not too demanding. Isn't that high? Professor Murray used to be really easy to talk to. Remember? When we were in 6th grade. Another student sighed and said, "It's just that this year the professor accepted a new student, and suddenly he didn't like us. He used to still like me very much." The girl in front said angrily, "Teach yourself runes in the 1st grade? That's crazy. If we weren't both in school, I would have thought it was a lie." Some students lamented, "Oh, why doesn't he spend more time on Quidditch? Have any of you studied the Book of Friends?" A boy suddenly asked. "I tried. It's hard. There's no way to crack it. It's easy to use a transformation spell to generate heat or display characters, but on a fragile material like parchment, it's a bit." Halfway through the boy's eloquent words, someone suddenly poked his arm, and his voice stopped abruptly. At the corner of the corridor, several people suddenly met Wade. Both sides looked at each other. Seeing Wade Gray, who was still like a child, and thinking about what they just said, everyone felt extremely embarrassed. After a moment of silence, they nodded stiffly and passed by. After walking a long distance, the voice sounded again. "That's Vader Gray." "Yes. Looks quite good looking." He probably didn't hear it, right?" "Heard, I guess." "Aw, why did you say it? Can't you lie to me?" "Stop shaking, I also want to die now, I really do." "Huh?" Professor Murray looked at Wade and asked doubtfully, "Are you a little different today?" Wade smiled and asked, "Professor, what do you think is different about me?" "It seems that there has indeed been a change." Professor Murray touched his chin and looked at Vader carefully. After a long while, he said uncertainly, "It seems that he has become more beautiful than before. But it's not a beauty potion. Effect." Vader smiled and took off a badge from his chest. Suddenly, the visual sense of fair and flawless skin that seemed to have a faint luster disappeared. Even though the facial features were still exquisite and the appearance was handsome, it was no longer as shining as before, making people involuntarily focus their attention on him. "Oh." Professor Murray took the badge in his hand for inspection with great interest. It was the work that Vader showed to the professor. Naturally, there was no anti-detection spell on it. Glowing spell, reflection spell, and solidification. Professor Murray looked at Vader with a smile in his eyes. "You used light?" "Yes." Wade said, "As you know, I have been taking pictures a lot recently. During this process, I discovered that the core of photography lies in the use of light. Proper use of light can cover facial flaws, make you look slimmer, and highlight facial contours. The three-dimensional effect makes people look better, so we made this soft light badge, which can reflect just the right amount of light on the wearer, making it look more dazzling. In short, it's the wizard's version of beauty filters. You always have fantastic ideas that amaze me. Professor Murray praised, many people have to drink a beautiful potion to achieve the effect that lasts for 20 minutes, but you can achieve it with a small batch. How long is the shelf life of this thing? About 10 days, Wade said. That's not bad. Professor Murray didn't take such a little thing too seriously and said casually, some young silly girls will like it. You are planning to still let Marchione's magic workshop produce and sell it? Yes. Wade took out the application to go to Hogsmeade Village from his pocket and said frankly, actually, when I came today, I wanted to ask the professor for permission to go to Hogsmeade on Saturday. About the Book of Friends, I need to meet with Mr. Marchione to discuss the modifications and the production of soft light badges. Just for this? Professor Murray was a little unconvinced. During this time, he also got to know Vader very well. With Vader's character, these problems that could be solved by exchanging letters would never come to him specifically to apply for his permission. Actually, I still want to meet someone. Vader was a little embarrassed. You know, I'm in school, so many things are inconvenient. My father is not suitable for frequently dealing with wizards. I'm worried that he will encounter someone because of this. Dangerous. So I found an agent. I plan to meet with him this Saturday. Agent? Professor Murray shook his head in disapproval. An unreliable agent is more dangerous than no agent. Who are you looking for? Did you know him before? Or is he related to your parents? I don't know him. Wade said honestly, I asked my father to post an advertisement in the newspaper, and he wrote a job application letter. After meeting, my father thought he was a gentle and reliable person, so he chose him as an agent. His name is Remus Lupin. Wade knew that he didn't need to explain to his parents why he trusted a stranger without any excuses. They would choose to believe him, and they have been like this since childhood. But for Professor Murray, Dumbledore, and other people in the wizarding world, he should have a suitable reason to explain this matter, so Wade slightly reversed the cause and effect. It was not that he issued a recruitment for someone, but that someone saw the advertisement and applied for a job, so he was hired. Remus Lupin. Professor Murray frowned slightly, his expression seemed a little melancholy, and with some memories. Do you know him? Wade asked curiously. Well. Professor Murray lowered his eyes and said in a low voice, he and his 3 friends were once the celebrities of Hogwarts. They made a lot of big news in school. Few people didn't know them. What a pity. What a pity. Some people died, some became traitors, that's all. There were many such things in the war years. There's nothing to say. Professor Murray changed the subject. You said you made an appointment to meet him on Saturday? Yes. I can approve it. Professor Murray crossed his fingers and said seriously, but I have to be there too. Chapter 84, Danger, and Danger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Professor. Wade was a little surprised. Some people's dangers cannot be seen on the surface. Professor Murray crossed his fingers, looked at Wade and asked, how much do you know about curses and contracts? Wade thought for a while. I have seen the Unbreakable Curse and the Fidelius Curse in the book. I have also studied the magic contract you made for me and Mr. Marchione last time, but I have not systematically studied this aspect yet. He has only been learning magic for a short time, and he has too many things to learn. Knowing that the future will be more chaotic and dangerous every year, Wade's focus has always been on improving his survival rate. He no longer pins his hopes for safety on anyone, but only hopes that he can have the ability to deal with any crisis. Professor Murray nodded, and was not disappointed, or rather, when he found that Wade still didn't understand something, it gave him a sense of accomplishment as a professor. Professor Murray said, the Unbreakable Curse is an extremely powerful oath. Anyone who breaks the oath will die, so it is only used in extreme cases. It is like a blood oath, which is an oath that ordinary people would not make even if they are willing to keep their promises. Let's not talk about this for now. Blood oath. Wade's heart moved slightly. The Fidelius charm is extremely complex and powerful. It is a magical spell used to keep secrets, but choosing the secret keeper is the key. if the secret keeper betrays, the spell is useless. If the secret keeper dies, all those who know the secret will become the new secret keeper. Therefore, this spell is to place all hopes on one person. Professor Murray paused and said, Harry Potter's parents died because of the wrong secret keeper. Wade knew about this, but he still asked, that person is Sirius Black. Professor Murray slowly read out the name in a disgusted tone, and then said, he and James Potter, Remus Lupin and Peter Pettigrew were once best friends, but he betrayed them, causing the death of the other two, and he himself was imprisoned in Azkaban. The only one still active outside is Remus Lupin, but I haven't heard of him for many years. Wade nodded slowly. Are you worried that he is a hidden dark wizard and will be harmful to me? Not only that, he is also werewolf. Professor Murray hesitated for a moment and swallowed the word again. It is normal for a few students to be Death Eaters. After all, almost all wizards in the UK have studied at Hogwarts, and there are all kinds of people. But if people knew that Dumbledore recruited a werewolf into the school and lived with other children for 7 years, even wizards who supported Dumbledore would probably think he was crazy. But if Wade didn't know this, he might be in danger. Professor Murray pondered for a moment, and said, he is still a person who cannot be approached on a full moon night. You are a smart child, you should understand what I mean. Ved nodded and said bluntly, in our defense against the dark arts class 2 days ago, Professor Quirrell talked about the various treatments after being bitten by a werewolf, and I have also learned some of them. Knowing this, do you still want him to be your agent? Professor Murray said, you know, this means that he is always in uncontrollable danger. If you need, I can introduce you to some reliable and safe people. Ved was really moved for a while, because he knew that since Professor Murray said so, it meant that he would use his own methods to confirm that the person introduced was reliable. But after hesitating for a moment, Wade still said, I am very grateful, Professor. But I have promised to give him this opportunity. This is already a promise to me. Unless his character is not good, I don't want to break the promise easily. Professor Murray was a little worried, but not surprised. In that case. He raised his hand and called for a few books, saying, let's stop teaching alchemy today and talk about magic contracts. This is the most common way to build trust between strangers. Time flows smoothly and silently like a trickle, and Saturday comes in a blink of an eye. This week is not a weekend in Hogsmeade, and most students sleep in the dormitory. Early in the morning, Wade got dressed, wrapped a blue scarf, and went to the first-floor auditorium. It is extremely rare that Professor Murray also appeared in the teacher's seat in the auditorium to eat breakfast, which surprised Professor McGonagall. She looked at him several times before cautiously greeting him, as if to confirm whether this Professor Murray was someone else pretending to be. Don't be so weird, Minerva. Professor Murray smiled and nodded at Wade, and said to Professor McGonagall, occasionally, I also want to feel the lively atmosphere brought by children. Wade bowed to Professor Murray and sat at the long table. Then he saw that the plate in front of him was replaced with his favorite food, and there were a few familiar candies next to it. He picked up the candy and tasted it first. The taste was sweet and not greasy at all. It tasted exactly the same as his mother sent. It seems that the cooking research of house elves should be very successful. After breakfast, Wade came to the gate of the castle first. After waiting for a while, Professor Murray also came out and said with a smile, the dishes in the Hogwarts kitchen are getting richer and richer, and the taste is good. I haven't been here for a long time. It seems that I have missed a lot of interesting changes. Ved also smiled and said casually, there are always some house elves who are not just doing their job, but studying cooking with all their heart, right? Interesting idea, very interesting. Professor Murray glanced at Vader and said, most people would think that a wizard gave them a better recipe, and would not think that house elves would take the initiative to study cooking. Why? Vader asked puzzledly. They are intelligent and have rich emotions. It is normal for them to have some personal hobbies and work hard for them and make breakthroughs. Professor Murray was stunned when he heard this, and then laughed. Vader. Although you know a lot, you grew up in the Muggle world after all. There are some things that are common sense to others, but you know nothing about them. This is normal, too normal. He touched Vader's head lovingly, and looked at him as if he was looking at a babbling child. House elves have no self, Vader. Professor Murray smiled and said, or, house elves with their own self are very dangerous to wizards. You should remember this, child. Chapter 85 3 Brooms. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The topic of house elves did not continue, because Hagel pulled the Thestral who had hitched the carriage and approached through the morning mist. Hello, Hagrid, thank you for preparing the carriage for us. Professor Murray said gently and politely. Nothing, Professor. Hagrid said cheerfully, it's a pleasure to help you, well done, kid. He lowered his body to greet Wade. Good morning, Mr. Hagrid. Wade said, looking up, the grey eyes looked cold and peaceful, making the superficial impression in Hagrid's mind suddenly become concrete. Oh, you are. Vader from Ravenclaw, right? Harry told me that you. Hagrid looked at him curiously, and then said in confusion, you should be one grade. He looked at Vader and then at Professor Murray, obviously troubled. Although Professor Murray smiled, he said in an unmistakable tone, Vade is my student, and I want to take him to Hogsmeade to practice alchemy. Hagrid scratched his hair, although he didn't understand why he went to Hogsmeade to learn alchemy. But after all, he only went to 3rd grade in school and didn't even fully understand basic magic. Who knew what conditions were needed to learn alchemy? So Hagrid hesitated for a while and didn't question it again. He patted the Thestral's neck soothingly, seemed to whisper something to it, and then said, Professor Murray, Vader, you can get in the car. This kid will take you to Hogsmeade. Wait until it's over. It will bring you back later. Okay, thank you, Hagrid. Professor Murray said politely. He got on the carriage first, and then said, Come up, Wade. After both of them were seated, Yechi stepped on the thin mist and the morning light, and the carriage creaked out of the school. Behind them, Hagrid pushed hard on the huge oak door, closing it. Thestrals stretched their black wings from time to time, as if they wanted to fly, but in the end they still walked quietly on the road. Can you see the Thestrals? Professor Murray asked suddenly when he saw where Wade's eyes were. Who did you see die? Professor Murray asked, and then immediately added, Oh, if you don't want to say it, you don't have to answer, it's a Muggle friend. After a long time, Wade said, many years ago, he fell ill and passed away. I watched that scene happen, and saw his parents in pain and despair, but there was nothing I could do. His eyes were dark and somewhat hollow, as if he was still immersed in the grief at that time. Professor Murray patted his back comfortingly and said softly, I understand, when a friend passes away, it's like losing a part of yourself, but time will slowly heal everything. Maybe your friend's parents have also moved on. Overcome the haze and even had a new child. Well, maybe that's the case. Vader was a little distracted and said softly, I hope that's the case. The carriage moved forward in silence, and Hogsmeade gradually emerged from the mist. Because it was not a Hogsmeade weekend, this small village seemed very quiet, with only 2 or 3 people wearing wizard robes walking on the streets. Far away, they saw the 3 Broomsticks pub. The orange light shines through the windows of the tavern, making it look warm and bright. Through the glass, you can see the crowds inside. It seems that there are many customers early in the morning. Wade jumped off the carriage and looked back. Go in, kid, I'll be in 2 minutes. Professor Murray said as he sat in the car, if everything goes well, I don't have to show up. But if the guy is late, don't hesitate, just shoot him. Just a werewolf, I'll introduce you to a better one. The old man's protective and overbearing words made Wade couldn't help but laugh. He nodded and said, of course, I will remember it, Professor. Pushing the door open, the wind chimes tinkled. The tavern was brightly lit in the early morning, and 2 hungover wizards were lying on the table, probably asleep. A graceful lady was standing at the bar, directing a rag to clean the table. When she heard the sound, she immediately raised a warm smile, but when she saw a student who was obviously not up to the height standard, she came over with some surprise. Child, today is not Hogsmeade weekend, right? Did you sneak out of school? She walked over and asked somewhat seriously. I made an appointment to meet here and applied with the professor. Wade said, already seeing the wizard sitting in the corner. He nodded. Excuse me, ma'am. Please give me a non-alcoholic drink. After finishing speaking, he walked towards the corner. Remus Lupin. This man was more haggard and older than he imagined, and it looked like he must have had a hard time over the years. He looked at Wade, who was approaching. His eyes gradually widened, and his originally calm face showed obvious shock. You are Vade Grey. Vader stretched out his hand and said, I think my father should have introduced you to him. Yes. Lupin shook hands with him at a loss. He said you had some business that needed help, but I thought you should be older. I can understand that many people think that first-year students should know nothing. Vader said, choosing to sit across from Lupin. The embarrassing thing is that the chair in the bar is relatively high. After he sat on it, his feet were dangling in the air. Ved propped his hands on the chair, moved back, and looked at Lupin nonchalantly. Let me introduce myself again. I am the inventor of the Book of Friends, Ved Grey, a first-year student at Hogwarts. I think you also know that this invention has brought me a lot of profits. I will have other cooperation with Aslan Magic Workshop in the future. Thank you, ma'am. Please enjoy. The tavern owner, Ms. Rosmerta, smiled, put a glass of butterbeer on Ved's table, looked at Lupin again, and then left. After Ved thanked him, he looked at the yellow color and creamy foam and suddenly fell silent. Butterbeer is actually a non-alcoholic beverage. Then what knocked him down last time? Really 2 chocolates with alcohol? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Butterbeer must have alcohol, otherwise what is beer? Maybe the lady didn't hear his request clearly. Wade retracted his gaze, recalled, and returned to the previous topic. So I need an agent to communicate with Aslan Magic Workshop on my behalf. In addition, because my personal learning progress far exceeds the current content taught in school, I also need a magic teacher. Lupin thought about the content of the recruitment advertisement. Do you want to learn the Patronus charm? And Animagus? More than that. Wade said, there are also disillusionment charm, apparition, and memory spells, etc. I want to learn all the magic I don't understand. Lupin was silent for a while, but still asked, including dark magic. Chapter 86 Contract, Garlon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wade had already thought about this question and asked flatly, do you know how to do black magic? Somewhat. Lupin hesitated, but did not hide anything. Vader nodded. I read in the book that during the Wizarding War, the Ministry of Magic approved Aurors to use the unforgivable curse on Death Eaters. Black magic with the purpose of harm can also be used to protect others. It can be seen that the properties of magic are secondly, it's the people who use it. The reason why black magic is evil is that it will silently corrode the user's heart. Lupin was afraid that he would mislead minors, so he hurriedly explained, and black magic is extremely dangerous. Understood. Wade said, if you accept the employment, then you will be my teacher. If you think I should not learn black magic, of course there is no need to teach me. Lupin relaxed slightly and smiled. He originally thought that someone who became famous at a young age would be very arrogant, but he didn't expect that the young man in front of him was surprisingly rational and able to accept other people's opinions. This is really a good start. At this time, Professor Murray opened the door and came in. He glanced around the bar and did not look at Vader or the two. Instead, he sat at a nearby table and ordered a glass of mead. Then if I accept this job, what do I need to do now? Lupin asked. I usually stay in school. How should our magic teaching be carried out? We'll talk about that later. Wade took out a roll of parchment from his pocket and put it on the table, and said, you take a look at this contract first. If you accept the terms above, sign your name. That's it. That's when the contract was officially concluded. Lupin looked solemn, unfolded the parchment, and read it one by one. The content of the contract is very simple. The entrustment matters are the same as those just discussed. It also stipulates that the agent, Lupin, has the obligation to safeguard the interests of the principal, Vade, keep the principal's secrets, and not cause harm to the principal. It is necessary to help the client purchase alchemical materials and magic items, and as a tutor, your responsibility is to teach knowledge, develop appropriate teaching plans, do your best to protect the safety of students during magic learning, etc. Lupin nodded secretly in his heart. This is all natural. Later, when he saw the agency fee, Lupin couldn't help but be startled, wondering if he had written it wrong. The basic salary is 30 galleons per week. He said in surprise, this is 3 times what was advertised. Yes. Vader nodded, the agent is 10 galleons per week, and the tutor is 20 galleons. This is the basic salary. In addition, you can get a certain commission after the transactions you are responsible for. Lupin was even more surprised when he heard this. He continued to unfold the parchment and saw that the content in this regard was stipulated in detail at the back. Of course, the end of the contract also states that if he fails to perform his duties at work and causes additional losses to the client, Wade has the right to unilaterally end the contract. Vader knew that given Lupin's situation, he would agree even if he was offered a very low salary. After all, not many people were willing to hire a dangerous werewolf. And Lupin's stronger moral standard than ordinary people does not allow him to obtain benefits by committing crimes. However, low salary, contract, and morality can only make Lupin perform his duties, but not his best efforts. The role that Vader needs Lupin to play is not a worker who is squeezed to the point of exhaustion, but a teacher who can teach everything he has, a comrade who can accompany him to face danger, and a partner who can be entrusted to the rear. And these cannot be achieved without a high sense of responsibility and identity. If Garlon could buy this kind of wizard's loyalty, Vader would empty his treasury without hesitation. But the fact is that if he offered a higher salary, Lupin would probably think that he was up to no good. Lupin looked at the contract repeatedly and couldn't help but hesitated. This is too high. He originally only wanted to find a job with a weekly salary of 10 galleons, which could barely support him, but the high salary that far exceeded his expectations made him a little panicked. I hope you will bring me corresponding rewards. Wade thought for a while and then said, if not, I will fire you next month. These words that sounded like a threat but were a little childish made Lupin relax his heartstrings. He smiled and said gently, it seems that I must show a 200% work attitude. Come to satisfy my little boss. Or maybe, after his werewolf identity is exposed, he will be fired immediately. Lupin thought to himself. He lowered his head and signed his name on the contract seriously. Vader also signed his name, and at this point, the contract was concluded. Wade took out the new version of the Book of Friends and the soft light badge from his bag, and said, now, let me tell you about my new work. Mr. Marchione, the owner of Oslin's magic workshop, will arrive in about half an hour. A broom, I think you should be ready before then. Lupin looked at those things blankly. The agent's work begins now. Of course. Wade raised his eyebrows and tapped his friend's account. I always race against time. Soon after, Marchione arrived. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Professor Murray and Wade sitting at 2 tables. He understood the current situation with just a turn of his eyes. So he pretended not to see Professor Murray and greeted Wade warmly in the corner. Afterwards, Marchione learned that Lupin was Vader's agent. He completely ignored the werewolf's shabby robes and downcast look, entered the docking state without any obstacles, and praised the soft light badge, even feeling that it was more important than the Book of Friends. You finally understand the true meaning of making money, Vader. Since Professor Murray was right behind him, Marchione blinked and said in a very low voice, and promised very eagerly, next time there is such a product, you must find me. I promise that I will give you the highest price. There is no way that anyone can be higher than me because those stupid guys can't understand the greatness of this work at all. The brown-haired wizard came and went in a hurry, and in a blink of an eye he was blown away like a gust of wind, and he didn't even touch the butter beer he ordered. So, is this the end? Lupin's face was still a little confused. Well, you have to get used to it. I told you, Vader said in a good mood, we race against time. Lupin was stunned for a moment and asked, what should we do now? There is no rush. Vader gave Lupin a friend's book for contact and handed him a bag of galleons. This is the first week's salary. I think you can, take care of yourself first. Professor Murray drank the mead slowly, squinting at his students. The young man smiled and talked to the wizard opposite. It was rare for him to show such high spirits, confident, firm, calm, and as dazzling as the rising sun. So outstanding. Time took away some people, changed some people. Decades and hundreds of years passed, but in the end it was found that nothing seemed to have changed. Chapter 87 Conflict, Gossip. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the weekend, the entire Hogwarts seemed to be empty. Almost all the students were on the Quidditch pitch, this time, for the Ravenclaw vs. Slytherin match. As a Ravenclaw, Vader naturally came to the audience with his classmates. In fact, Vader has never been interested in the sport of Quidditch at all. Flying freely in the sky on a broomstick certainly feels good, but risking a broken neck and playing 50 feet high, this seemed stupid to him. The experience as a spectator is not good either. The golden snitch is so small that you can't even see it except for the occasional flash of golden light. Most of the time the seeker seems to be flying at high altitudes with nothing to do. The speed of other people is sometimes faster than the cars on the highway. Small quaffles and bludgers are passed quickly among the players. Wade suspects that most people can't see clearly which step of the game is going on. Rely on the commentary to know when to cheer, but the students still love the sport. Of course, anyone who is locked up in a boarding school studying all day long will love any group activity that has nothing to do with studying, even if it is hoeing the lawn or picking up grass from the nearby streets. Rubbish. Vader is an exception, as the joy and sense of accomplishment he derives from learning magic transcends all forms of competition. The stands suddenly burst into cheers. Wade was stunned for a moment, and then he followed his classmates in applauding politely. Ravenclaw won the contest. The seeker was a senior boy. He raised his right hand high, and the wings of the golden snitch were flapping between his fingers. He circled the field at high speed on his broomstick, displaying the golden snitch for all to see. Countless people stretched out their hands, wanting to clap their hands with him like a big star. Ravenclaw! 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 In the audience, even the Gryffindor students were shouting along. Seeing the Slytherins lose made them happier than anything else. The Slytherin student left sullenly. Our score is about the same as Hufflepuff, and we defeated Slytherin again. On the way back to the castle, Michael calculated the scores of the two games and said excitedly, maybe this time Ravenclaw can hold the Quidditch Cup. I haven't seen you so active in the Academy Cup. Vader complained. How can this be the same? Michael said disapprovingly, I heard that Shariah, a third-year student, said that even if she won the college cup, she would just change the decoration of the auditorium to the colors of her college during the final dinner. Has no meaning. In fact, many Ravenclaws, like Michael, have a dispensable attitude towards the house cup. High scores are fine, low scores are fine, even being at the bottom does not matter, and they will not work hard in class. Strive for more points for your own academy. There are no other rewards for the Quidditch Cup. Vader said. This is Quidditch. Michael opened his eyes wide. Winning the Quidditch Cup is the greatest honor. Suddenly there was a loud laugh from the side. Malfoy came over with two followers and said in a low voice, You are so proud of just winning a game. Don't forget that the Academy Cup has been ours for the past 6 years. Ravenclaws. He stared darkly at Vader and spat out one word with malice, mudblood. Michael whipped out his wand angrily. How dare you? Malfoy jumped back and threatened, the professor is right behind you, how dare you do anything? What dare I not do? Michael said angrily, just let the professor know what you said. He was about to recite a curse, but was held down by Vader. Malfoy. Vader said calmly, you should really take a look in the mirror, see how ugly and despicable you look now. Malfoy didn't know how to reply for a moment, and it took him a while to think of continuing to attack Vader's bloodline. You filthy. But Wade and Michael had already walked past, as if the people in front of them were just weeds on the roadside. Malfoy also heard him say, Michael, when a vicious dog bites someone, just kick it away. You can't just lie down and bite it back, right? Michael didn't know whether it was because he was laughing too hard or because he had imagined such a scene, but he was immediately amused. Even some students passing by couldn't help laughing, and looked at a few Slytherins teasingly. When Malfoy heard the laughter, he felt as if a steel knife had been scratched on his face. He was so angry that he trembled all over and almost cast a curse, but in the end, it was the professor's presence nearby that was more intimidating. Allowing Malfoy to suppress his temper, he walked quickly towards the castle with his head sullen, gritting his teeth with hatred as he thought about the humiliation that Wade had given him twice. Crabbe and Goyle hurriedly followed, with silly expressions on their faces, as if they didn't understand anything. When Malfoy heard the voices of the people around him, he felt like they were laughing at him. Suddenly, he really heard his name. Malfoy and Vader had another conflict. He must hate Vader now, right? The girl's voice seemed worried. Malfoy recognized the voice as Padma from Ravenclaw, who seemed to have a good relationship with Vader. He subconsciously hid behind a pillar to eavesdrop, and signaled Crabbe and Goyle to hide quickly. The two fat boys looked at each other and hid themselves behind Malfoy, looking like they were skewering a bunch of candied haws. Another similar voice, Parvati said, "Of course, after all, he is a pure-blood Malfoy." "You say, Malfoy is not still using the friend book invented by Vader?" Padma said. "Huh." Parvati was stunned for a moment, and said vaguely, "This should be." "I don't think so either." Padma said with a smile, "Otherwise, he would be very ridiculous while scolding Vader and using something invented by Vader, right?" Right. Parvati stuttered. She didn't understand. Who would give up such a useful thing for a quarrel? "And the friend book is not cheap," but seeing Padma's determined look, and thinking about her unfinished potion homework, Parvati rationally closed her mouth. Padma turned her eyes and saw a group of figures behind the pillar, and a sly smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. The girl's left hand in hand. Malfoy came out from behind the pillar, and his pale face turned red. He took out the friend book, tore it into pieces without hesitation, and threw it on the ground. "Go and keep an eye on Weed Grey," Malfoy said viciously. "See when he goes to the potion classroom." "I will never let that guy go," thought in his mind. The most powerful and vicious spells he knew were Running Dash, Killing Curse, Cruciatus Curse, Gut-Pulling Curse. "No, I can't do any of these." Teeth as Big Bludgeon, Leg-Locking Curse, Blazing Fire. Chapter 88 Practice, News. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Boom, that the light of the spell exploded, and Harry flew backwards and hit the soft cushion beside the wall, letting out a low groan. When he looked up again, he held his nose and bright red blood dripped down. "Oh, Harry!" Hermione called, and hurriedly stepped forward to ask, "How are you?" "It hit my nose," Harry replied in a muffled voice. He took some white essence from the shelf on the wall and applied it to his nose skillfully, then wiped the blood on his face with a tissue. Neville helped him pick up the wand, and Harry said, "Thanks, Neville." The wound healed after a while. Harry raised his head and asked, "I think the iron armor curse I just cast has some effect, right?" "Indeed, my spell was a little off." Vader nodded in confirmation, and then asked, "But it was too weak and did not have the desired effect." "Pay attention, Protego, iron armor protection, you be more decisive when saying it. There is not much skill in this mantra, it just requires repeated practice." "I understand." Harry took a deep breath, moved his wrist, and tightened his grip on the wand. "Continue." "Certainly," Harry said decisively, stood firm, and waved his wand vigorously. "Iron armor. Expelliarmus." The light of the spell collided again, and Harry's wand was released again. "Has Harry been working too hard these past 2 days?" Michael asked Neville, who had just walked back. "I see that he has been injured several times today." "Well, a little bit." Neville said vaguely, "Shall we continue practicing the disarming spell?" "Listen to me, Neville, you can't finish learning spells. Only by learning to rest can you learn better." Michael sat on the ground and didn't want to move, and said lazily, "You are not being chased by a mysterious man." "Kill, why are you working so hard?" Among everyone in the SSC, except for Vader, Harry has made the most progress. He has learned the disarming curse and the iron armor curse, but the invisible armor that protects him is still at the stage where it can be broken at a touch, and the one who has made the slowest progress is Neville, who has not yet successfully cast the disarming curse, but Michael knew that Neville actually worked harder than anyone else. Seeing him fail again and again and get up from the ground again and again, Michael felt hurt for him. Neville didn't speak, just stood silently in the sparring position, and then looked at Michael silently. Michael. He suppressed the discomfort that felt like being stung by ants all over his body and stayed on the ground for another 2 minutes. Finally, he could not resist the condemnation of his conscience and got up from the ground. Why should I study hard here with you and practice 5th and 6th grade stuff? Michael muttered, I will definitely not come tomorrow night. I need a party, I need to play games, even if it's just sitting in front of the fireplace. Do nothing. Neville was just laughing. At first, he would still believe it, worried that Michael would no longer want to be trained by him and would never come to the umbrella house again, so he would train for a while and rest for a while. But later, Neville discovered that Michael had always just talked and would still show up on time the next day. If he doesn't come, you won't have a partner. Or we can rotate exercises, but one person will always be left alone. At the end of the training, Hermione pointedly pointed out the reason why Michael did this. He just wants to be lazy. But I don't want this to hold back those who are willing to work hard. Neville was startled, and suddenly felt apologetic, but I have never mastered the disarming spell. I'm really sorry for his efforts. Yeah, it's really strange. Hermione frowned, confused. Vade taught you in detail. He said that your movements and spells are fine, so why can't you succeed? Hermione. Harry interrupted hastily. When a top student asks a bad student why can't you learn something so simple? Isn't it the same as saying you are incredibly stupid? Neville was not that sensitive. He looked down at his wand, lost in thought. In the evening, after Wade finished washing and wiping his wet hair, he came out of the bathroom and saw a familiar house elf standing in the room. McGee. Sit down. Wade put down the wet towel, poured a glass of water for McGee and pushed it over. He also poured a glass for himself and drank it all in one gulp. Mikey did not sit down. He leaned on the edge of the chair, holding the hot water he had brought. His big eyes were wet, and he said in a thin voice, Wade Gray shouldn't go to the potions classroom tomorrow afternoon. Classroom. There are other students using it. Wade stopped and thought for a moment before putting the water glass back to its place. During lunch today, he sat near Pruitt and pretended to talk casually, telling Padma that he was going to potions class tomorrow to practice the shrinking potion. Originally, Vader was still thinking about whether he should pretend to be casual and mention it around the Slytherin students. Now it seems that there is no need for it. On the other hand, McGee, he seems to have learned some bug-fixing skills since the last time we talked. At this time, he shook his body slightly and drank the water with great care. He seemed very happy and had no intention of punishing himself for this. Wade smiled and asked, Are there any senior students? No, McGee said. It's the same as Vader Gray. How many students are going to use the potions classroom? The house elf hesitated. 6. 7. 6. 6 or 7 people, one of them may not go. Wade asked. McGee shook his head. They thought she was in the same group, but she's not. I understand. Wade took out a small friend's book and handed it to McGee, and said, I think you know how to use this. If you can't go to the potions classroom tomorrow, please let me know, okay? Okay, McGee will do it. McGee is very willing to help Wade Gray. McGee bowed happily and disappeared with a snap of his friend account. Vade, have you noticed, in the history of magic class, Michael looked around and lowered his voice and said, Slytherin is a little weird today. What do you say? Wade asked. Just now at the door, Zabini actually smiled at me, which was really scary. Michael rubbed his arms. Are these guys planning some bad ideas? Slytherin's student reputation has never been very good, but they themselves are very united. Since the last conflict between Vader, Malfoy and others in the corridor, other Slytherin students no longer greeted them. Even in the classroom, the two sides are clearly distinct and will not mix together. However, the conflict between the two sides did not escalate to the level of two colleges. Not like Gryffindor and Slytherin, who constantly make trouble for each other. Remove the should. Vader lowered his voice and said, "They are preparing to ambush me." "Ambush you, in the potions classroom?" Michael suddenly said, "No wonder you suddenly brought up the topic of potions yesterday. Do you plan to wait until they are ready before going to the professor to report? Or?" He rolled his eyes and said excitedly in a lower voice, "Lou Professor Snape over." Chapter 89 Good Intentions, Bad Intentions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Wade glanced at him and shook his head. Michael was stunned. "That's not your idea? Then you are planning to." "I'll go by myself," Wade said. "Got it." Michael nodded. "I will call everyone." "No, Michael. I mean, I'll go by myself." Vader emphasized again. Michael's eyes widened instantly, with shock written on his face. After a while, he frowned and said, "Who are you?" "You are not my friend Vader, you are some fake Gryffindor, right?" Vader was speechless. "I'm not kidding. Are you crazy?" Michael was serious and anxious, almost yelling, "They are a group of people, and you are just one." "Okay, I know." Wade patted his arm to calm him down. Michael's reaction was so great that even Professor Binns, who was teaching slowly, looked over. Michael quickly lowered his head, held up a copy of History of Magic to block the professor's gaze, turned around and glared at Wade fiercely, gritted his teeth and said, "Normal students know that when a group of people want to bully you, correct, the best thing to do is to report it to the professor." "Yes, you are right." Vader also whispered, "But then, the Slytherins will think that we are cowards and nerds who can only complain to the professor. If they fail this time, there will definitely be something brewing. Conspiracy next time. Then give them an unforgettable lesson." Michael's eyes looked particularly deep. "Listen, I have an idea. Professor Snape has a potions class in the 4th grade in the afternoon. After class, you go ask questions and take the opportunity to delay Professor Snape. Then I will find someone to pass the news to Slytherin, so that they will think you are there alone. You can throw a few dung bombs to say hello. And then Snape, who was submerged in the dung bomb, ate them alive." Vader asked. "How about it? Isn't it great?" Michael asked eagerly. Wade nodded. "Great. Then I still decided to go by myself." Wade still said stubbornly. Michael was silent for a moment and said quietly, "Don't tell me, you were touched by seeing Harry and Neville's efforts and decided to move closer to Gryffindor. How is that possible?" Vader laughed dumbly. Well, I can ensure that I will not suffer a disadvantage, and I don't want to take advantage of Professor Snape's kindness and sense of responsibility." Michael was silent. He lay on the table as if he was exhausted, and sighed helplessly. "Vade, a person who is too moral will definitely suffer a loss." Vader couldn't help but laugh. "At least not this time," he said. Vader was very grateful that Michael had always considered himself, even at the cost of offending Slytherin and trying to take advantage of Professor Snape, but there were some things he couldn't say to Michael. For example, Voldemort or Death Eaters will visit the school every year in the future. The situation they will face in the future will be much crueler than now. Many people will die, including Dumbledore, who seems to be omnipotent in the eyes of the students. For example, when Slytherin confronts him, there will be several house elves in the school keeping an eye on the situation, but he is actually not in danger at all, and Michael's guess was correct. He was indeed touched by Harry and Neville, watching them get injured again and again in the umbrella house filled with cushions and pillows, and when they get up to train again and again, Vader will think of the guy in the plot who didn't even master Expelliarmus, but went to face it alone. Little savior to Quirrell and Voldemort. Of course, Vader still feels that he was too reckless. But think about it from another perspective. Is he too cautious and lacks courage? If in an environment where the safety factor reaches more than 90%, and even if an accident occurs, it can be solved in time, he cannot directly face the threats of several children, but must use conspiracy and trickery to deceive the power of others. Solution. Then after Voldemort is resurrected in the future, will he just escape from Britain with his tail between his legs? Even if one day he has to leave this land, he should do it in an upright and fair manner, rather than abandoning his friends and teachers, dreams and future, and fleeing with his parents like a bereaved dog. What's more, during this period of battle training, it was not just Harry and the others, Vader was also observing, learning, and growing during the battle. He found that even the best ones, Harry and Hermione, were actually stationary in their output. They didn't know how to be flexible, they didn't know many spells, and the power of the spells was also very limited. When the opponent's spell comes over, they don't want to move to dodge. But as soon as they move around, their magic gestures will also change, and their spells will easily fail or miss. This is the case for both of them, and Slytherin students cannot be any stronger. This is normal for a first grader, so even if he faced twice as many people, Vader couldn't think of a reason why he would lose. Coincidentally, the afternoon herbology class was still held by Ravenclaw and Slytherin. Although the two sides kept a distance, some Slytherin's malice almost turned into reality. They are not acting masters, and their ability to hold back secrets for a whole day is already their limit, but the way they communicate with each other, as well as the proud and gloating eyes they occasionally look at Vader, completely convey what they want to say. Speaking out, students who had nothing to do with this matter were aware of it. Ved, Slytherin seems to be up to something bad. During the practical operation, Anthony Goldstein ran over and said to Ved, "Let's all go together after class to avoid them causing trouble for you." Ved looked at him, then looked over his shoulder at the students behind him, shook his head in their worried eyes, and said with a smile, "Thank you, but no need. I know what I'm doing." Goldstein turned to Michael and said, "Michael, don't persuade him." Michael shrugged. This guy is stubborn, no one can persuade him. That when the get-out of class was over, several Slytherin students lingered outside the greenhouse, and the Ravenclaws followed Goldstein and left at Ved's signal. "Mr. Gray," Professor Sprout suddenly said, "these sap grasses need to be moved to another greenhouse, can you help me get them?" Ved, who was about to leave, was stunned for a moment, and then said, "Of course, Professor." He picked up a pot of sap grass, and Professor Sprout also held a pot himself. When leaving greenhouse number 1, the head of Hufflepuff looked at the Slytherins who were lingering around the greenhouse, his face darkened, and he asked in a cold voice, "What else do you want?" Although Professor Sprout is usually cheerful and easy to talk to, her stern face is like a volcano about to erupt, which is very scary. Malfoy and others hurriedly said, "No, no." Then they ran away in a hurry. Wade almost laughed out loud. Professor Sprout turned his eyes to him, and his smile suddenly became friendly. "Mr. Gray, I think you need some help." Wade smiled and shook his head, his eyes were clear and his smile was gentle. He said, "Thank you, Professor. It's just a few misunderstandings, I can handle it myself." Chapter 90 Ambush, Counterattack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Malfoy and his friends ran away in panic, and when they returned to the empty potions classroom, several of them were a little depressed. "Draco, we have all the mechanisms ready, what's going on?" The two girls carefully walked in from the door holding a few glass bottles. They were a little strange when they saw everyone's appearance. "Let's break up," Pansy. Nott frowned, slumped his shoulders, and said weakly, "Gray will definitely not come. Professor Sprout has noticed it, she left Wade Gray behind. You guys are too impatient. Now, everything is screwed up." Malfoy kicked a stool over angrily and sat down at the table angrily. Crabbe and Goyle stared at the others with bulging eyes, as if it was everyone else's fault. "Let's wait until next time." Zabini shook his head, sat down, and sighed, "As long as you want to, you will always get in his way." Although he said this, the morale of the Slytherins became low except for Malfoy, the blonde girl who followed Pansy and said hesitantly, "What should I do with these potions?" "Throw them away." The bottle contained a failed scabies potion. Malfoy's potion skills are very good, but in the first potions class, Neville's failed potion caused quite a mess, which left a deep impression on Malfoy. In his opinion, that potion is much more useful than any scabies treatment. This time, in order to deal with Wade Gray, Malfoy secretly brewed a pot of scabies potion, and deliberately added porcupine quills before the pot was taken off the fire. and successfully obtained a large bottle of potion that could incinerate the crucible. Green poison, unfortunately, this medicine evaporates all the time, and soon it will change from a highly corrosive acidic solution to an ordinary liquid that will not cause any harm to people except for an unpleasant smell. Malfoy waved his hand and said, "Throw it away, wait, give it to me, Daphne." He suddenly thought of a bad idea, took the glass bottles from Daphne, and carefully stuffed them one by one into the desk cabinet in the corner. Malfoy had inquired, and Vader often sat in that position. "I still have it here, Draco." Pansy pushed Daphne aside and enthusiastically handed over the potion in her hand. Daphne hesitated. "What if I hurt someone else?" "Whatever." Malfoy said nonchalantly, "It's bad luck for them. Maybe the professor will give Gray a solitary confinement." "Wade Gray, why do you put such dangerous things in the desk cabinet?" 50 points from Ravenclaw for intentionally hurting a classmate. Malfoy imitated Professor Snape's scolding of Harry Potter, which immediately made everyone laugh. Nod also made a strange expression, and said in a high-pitched voice, Professor, I don't know what's going on." "Ha ha ha." The others smashed the table with laughter and could hardly breathe. "He's coming. He's coming." A boy ran in quickly and shouted excitedly, "Draco, he's coming this way." "Who?" Malfoy didn't react for a moment. "Who else can it be?" The boy named Millicent Bursted jumped to his feet anxiously and shouted, "Wade Gray." "How could?" Zabini said doubtfully. "He must have thought that because of the professor's warning, we didn't dare to take action." Malfoy jumped off the chair, took out another potion bottle from the desk cabinet and gave it to several people, urging, "Quick, quick, as promised before come." Everyone moved, and the two girls moved away, but Pansy couldn't help but get closer to Malfoy again, as if she was fighting alongside him. Several boys took out their wands and locked the windows of the classroom, then prepared to cast spells. Crabbe and Goyle were ready to throw out the scabies potion as if they were holding grenades. Nod also took out 2 hidden potions from under the medicine cabinet. Bomb. Daphne lay next to the window and watched. In order to avoid being discovered, she hid in the corner and watched carefully. "It is indeed Wade Gray." The blonde girl said softly, "He came alone." "Without anyone else?" Zabini asked with a frown. "No." "Strange." Zabini couldn't understand. Was he really not wary at all? "Humph, he is indeed a Ravenclaw nerd." Malfoy said contemptuously, and gave the final instruction, "Remember what we agreed on before, first throw the dung bombs, and then the scabies potion," and I took the opportunity to use the leg-locking curse. Crabbe, Goyle, you two go catch him, and Not remembers to grab the wand. Crabbe and Goyle responded. Not looked at the dung bomb in his hand, and his face suddenly turned a little green. When he grabbed the wand, he wouldn't have gotten this thing on him, right? Looking at the small space at the door, Not was a little unsure. He began to think about putting the dung bomb back, or exchanging it with Goyle. His body, which is twice the size of others, can definitely block most. Just when Not was hesitating, he suddenly heard someone whisper, "Expulso." "What?" An invisible wind suddenly whirled sand and rocks around the classroom. Just as Not was about to speak, he took a mouthful of sand. Everyone screamed in unison, and then started rubbing their eyes. "He's at the door." Malfoy covered his mouth with his sleeve and shouted loudly, "Throw the dung bomb. Throw the dung bomb quickly." There was a sound at the door. Not had no time to distinguish it and threw the dung bomb out with force. Bang! The dung bomb hit an ugly head and exploded, and the foul-smelling substance immediately sprayed all over the classroom. A huge cockroach crawled in from the door, facing the face that made people lose all reason. Not remembered belatedly that the voice he heard just now seemed to say, "Engorgo, enlarge quickly." The boy who was frightened and his brain was blank was pressed down by the huge cockroach without any resistance. Immediately afterwards, 1, 2, 3, a total of 5 or 6 spiders that were also enlarged to the size of hounds came in from behind the cockroach. "Ah!" Everyone in the potions classroom screamed wildly and began to flee in panic. Malfoy quickly jumped onto the table to pull the window, but found that the window was locked by a spell. They did it themselves. Alahum, he hadn't finished the unlocking spell when a claw hooked his clothes from behind and dragged him backwards. No, no, let me go. Mom. Help, the classroom was filled with students' cries of fear. The insects cast with the confusion spell didn't do anything to them, but just the close contact had scared them to the point of peeing their pants. Petrificus totalis, petrified totally.